I was so excited when I saw this news article recently from ABC Alice Springs. I have a good friend that works at this school, and I know that it really is as good as the ABC's presented it here.
We are together helping one another. If she's doing English, reading, writing, I'm there to help her. When I do my Walbury teaching, she's there on the side helping her.
My friend says that despite the community having a typical range of social challenges, the school is thriving because of this bilingual teaching project. The specific strategy that is employed here is the use of 2 teachers in each classroom. One is employed by the department and one is employed and fully funded by the community.
It's not government money, it's not company money, it's money that they've got and they're spending it wisely.
The 2 teachers are complementary to each other and the students learn in both their mother tongue and in English. This strategy improves student outcomes, and as Professor McDodson says,
I think there needs to be fresh thinking around education, particularly bilingual education. The evidence points to kids learning better at first in their mother tongue.
Both the department teacher and the community teacher are supported generously by the department through access to specific professional development in major centres such as Alice Springs and Darwin. In turn, they support not just the school, but the whole community. A recent example of this was that the students went along with the whole community to Walkabout for a week. My teacher friend was able to drive the truck with all of the supplies that helped the whole community in that situation. So they're able to help the community in ways that perhaps teachers in larger towns wouldn't be able to. In studies conducted about bilingual education, particularly in African and South American nations, the results showed that the use of mother tongue in primary schooling offers a number of documented benefits, such as bridging the gap between home and school cultures and raising student identity and self-esteem. The academic potential is to produce students who are completely bilingual and biliterate.
I've got a son, and he went through bilingual, and he's got a really good job now. And I'm really proud of that too.
This blog piece starts with the assumption that due to popular media reporting, there is a huge problem with literacy rates in Australia. Reports of Australia's declining position in world rankings and teachers that are not being held to account to ensure that they are teaching the latest evidence-based solutions. If they were, according to media, Australia would regain its place high on world rankings lists. Deborah Hayes then changes tack and shows that without a doubt, Australian teachers are highly committed to teaching well-developed literacy programs despite media reporting. The research behind the article included repeated fly-on-the-walls observations of teachers that showed some flaws in the system were coming out in the classroom. One big one was that teachers are spending too much time on only those skills to be tested. The writer described other missed opportunities as an unintended effect of teachers trying to do what they believed was expected of them. Overall, teachers were doing their best teaching the evidence-based solutions, and their students were doing well. The interesting part for me was this. The study then identified a small number of teachers who adopted uncommon pedagogical approaches. Deborah said that these teachers incorporated the requirements of their school's literacy agreements in an already rich repertoire of teaching practice. These teachers engaged students by recognizing the knowledge and experiences that the students have and connecting these to school learning, by actively and positively connecting the classroom practices to their families and communities, by designing learning tasks that were open-ended and that demanded complex thinking and language, and by providing opportunities for students to think about significant personal and social issues such as loneliness, hope, and relationships. by engaging with relevant texts. The studies show that these uncommon pedagogical approaches led to much higher levels of engagement and success by students. They built on relationships, especially with families, and helped to develop trust. The study went on to talk about how the media must change their script around what teachers should be doing to fix Australia's sliding ranking on world lists. By recognising that teaching is a craft that's highly developed and not always tangibly measurable, the media, and therefore the wider community, might stop blaming teachers and instead offer more support and trust of teachers doing what they're trained to do. When I watched this episode of Australian Story about Mr. Eddie Wu, it made me wish that I had a maths teacher just like him when I was at school.
They're always going to charge you interest. You're going to say, oh, that's cool, I'll just pay a day earlier. And they'll say, ha ha ha, joke's on you, we'll just charge you interest earlier.
Eddie is the son of immigrant parents, and as a result of his own experience, is incredibly empathetic to students who are maybe on the outside of social circles.
I only have one rule in my classroom, and I call it the human rule. Very simple. I will treat you like humans, and I expect you to treat me like a human too.
The death of his mother from cancer when he was in high school caused him to show further empathy, and when he had a student in his own class who was missing school due to his own cancer battle, he began recording and broadcasting his math lessons so that that student could keep up. This led to students sharing his videos, and now Mr. Wu is an internet sensation with his own WooTube channel. Here is where it gets really interesting. Mr. Wu makes these videos available for anyone who wants them, with no charge. This generosity has led to students in remote towns such as Cobar having access to his lessons.
I've just got the Wi-Fi, just Google it up saying simultaneous equations, Eddie Wu, and then it comes up.
Takeaway 7 is 5. Cool. Yay, I can maths. This lady I'll do.
I can use it at home. I don't need to travel or pay for it. It just removes those barriers that hold us back sometimes due to isolation.
Both Indigenous and non-Indigenous students who previously would have been disadvantaged by a lack of teachers, by isolation, perhaps by a lack of income for them to receive additional support, now have these barriers removed thanks to Mr. Wu. This sharing of professional expertise exemplifies that Mr. Wu not only identifies with, but also shows great empathy towards issues around teaching numeracy. He is actively working to resolve these issues where he can. He's improving student outcomes not only for students in his own classroom, but in a much wider scope. Mr. Wu professionally supports other maths teachers who are teaching in remote communities and is closely involved in developing them professionally.
We've just been doing practice questions. What are you doing with your Year 12 class? I'm trying to think of something interesting and exciting to do with them tomorrow.
What I did was I set up the room with 4 corners, and I set up like a sort of mini whiteboard for each year.
It's hard to get teachers out here that might be a little bit different, so I might know 3 or 4 ways to explain a topic, but it hasn't clicked with a student.
Can we walk through this for a second? Now, you've seen this before. I wonder if you...
So I can bring that other teacher in the form of an Eddie Wu video. He can explain it again.
I could not find research that either supported or discouraged the teaching of maths online. However, studies conducted into learning a language online showed that students benefited from online learning because of the variety and the broadening of the pedagogy, methodology, and the environment. These results are reflected in what Mr. Wu is doing.
So much goes on around him that celebrates the work that he does. I've literally never seen it go to his head at all.
Now, our final teacher today from Cherrybrook Technical High School, where he's a maths teacher, but he's also an internet sensation. This guy is the Kim Kardashian of Australian mathematics teaching, as far as I'm concerned. This is Eddie Wu.
There is no doubt that teachers generally change lives, and somebody as motivated and as wonderful as Eddie undoubtedly will.
I view all of these awards as part of raising the profile of education and helping people recognise that teaching matters and it deserves the best people who we can press into its service.
This review is about an article written for the ABC titled Closing the Maths Gap with Stories and Dance by Anna Sala. The challenge that is identified here is that, on average, Aboriginal students are 2 years behind their non-Indigenous peers when it comes to maths. Dr. Christopher Matthews from Griffith University, himself an Aboriginal man, says, "Maths and science are very much seen, from an Aboriginal point of view, as a white fella thing." And he saw the need for Aboriginal people to be skilled at maths and science in order to play a part in decision-making over environmental issues related to their land. So the report says that Dr. Matthews set out to develop a new way of teaching maths at school. While the need was identified specifically in Indigenous communities, the solutions are being shown to benefit not only Indigenous students. The main issue identified was most students only experience maths in the abstract, without getting to relate it to something meaningful to them. As a response to this, a strategy was developed, which includes movement. For example, if teaching about units of measurement, a teacher and the students would go out and run 1 kilometre so that the students can grasp just how far that is. The strategy also involves blending culture with learning. For example, young students are asked to create a traditional dance that represents a mathematical problem. Children came up with dances that used kangaroos being hunted to represent subtraction and rain clouds bursting to show addition when the raindrops fell to the earth. Professor Tom Cooper, the head of the Yumi Deadly Centre for Maths Education at the Queensland University of Technology, said that the principles involved in Dr. Matthews' approach to maths as storytelling are very powerful. "It's the basis of our teaching now," he said. From 2010 to 2015, 250 schools adopted this method of teaching. It spread far beyond Indigenous communities. Professor Cooper said, "You've got to look at your kids and you've got to get to know their culture. You must always start your teaching from something that interests them." There is not yet sufficient data to show if this method of teaching maths, particularly in Indigenous communities, has been successful. However, from data related to the NAPLAN results, it is clear that this method is very much needed.